This week's special show is brought to us by Foster Contracting. The recent thunderstorms that have been producing wind and hail in the area may have damaged your home's roof. The certified roofing pros at Foster Contracting offer free roof inspections, and if your roof has received damage, most homeowners will have little or no cost out of pocket when going through your insurance. If you're looking for a quality construction with a dependable, licensed, and certified fortified roofing professional, give the Fortified Roofing Pros a call at 251-973-9999. They're a family-owned business that is big enough to get the job done, but small enough to care. Remember to support the local businesses that make this podcast possible each week. Check them out at fortifiedroofingpros.com. Also brought to you by the Alabama Fishing Rodeo. You don't have to spend tons of money to compete in a fishing tournament. The Alabama Fishing Rodeo is an inexpensive way to get out fishing with the family and friends. You can fish from a boat, kayak, the beach, or the pier. All ages can compete in the tournament, and there are tons of great prizes. This year's rodeo will be June 12th through June 14th, and it's easy to register. Just go to fishflorabama.com for tickets and find out more. You guys keep whacking them. We'll talk to you soon. Hey guys, and welcome to the Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report. I am joined today with Joe Baya, Captain Patrick Garmison, and Captain Kyle Johnson. How you guys doing today?
Great, man. How you doing?
Fantastic.
Good, man. Mobile Boat Show 2020. Having a good time so far, having a good turnout. What are we calling this? The Spotted Sea Trout Boat Show Special?
Speckled trout, spotted sea trout. What other names are out there for them? Specks,
Trouts.
what?
Trout with a Z, Trouts.
Yeah. Nah, we're going to focus in on big trout, little trout, all the trout, specifically speckled trout. We're here with Kyle Johnson and Speckled Truth.
Yep.
Kyle, what we want to know is we've been hearing a lot about the Speckled Truth, and so we want to find out what you guys are all about. Tell us a little bit about what your mission is, what's your vision?
So the Speckled Truth started out as a blog. It was started by Christopher Bush, and he's become quite the name in the speckled trout world here lately. Not lately, the past couple of years, really. And he's just a phenomenal speckled trout fisherman, big trout. He's caught, I want to say, 5 trout over 30 inches. He's working on a stringer mount, which he's not keeping them. It's going to be fiberglass, but he wants a big stringer mount of all his 30-plus inch trout.
It's a big trout.
And that's just insane on its own. He had a blog, and I was reading it, and he's active duty Air Force, and he was living in Biloxi. I live in Gulfport, and we were part of a local forum called the Bull Nettle, and we kind of knew each other through there. And he started writing a blog, and I started following it. And it was just, dude, if you've seen it and you've read it, the dude's like the Hemingway of the trout world. He writes so good, and it's amazing. And the only thing was, and I've said this a couple times on a couple different podcasts, but if you went to his old site, and I wish he would put it back up so people could see this. It was the worst site you've ever seen in your life. It was like doo-doo brown background with yellow lettering.
Sorry, Chris.
But it was like this information was gold. I was like, this dude's got to get this stuff, go. And that's how I got involved and kind of helping him on that side and the social media side. And we became really good friends. And he made me a way better trout fisherman. I met him when I was going in my transition from being a meat hauler to focusing on big trout and the conservation. And so he helped change me. I guess he converted me. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. But that's kind of our mission, man. We want to get you into that next level of fishing. I feel like there's stages of trout fishermen. You go from, wanting to catch trout, wanting to get limits, and then once you graduate from that and you evolve, you realize the conservation side of things, and you want to catch big trout and you want to release them. And
if I let this fish go, it could be bigger one day.
Yes, and it will make a bunch more trout for everyone else. Yeah. For the first level guy, it's all just a big circle. And so we promote the conservation side of things. We don't want to shove it down people's throats. We just want to say, hey, let one go. See what you like. See what you like about it.
Yeah. You guys are the Quality Deer Management Association of trout.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do, man. Yeah. And
I like it.
And the way we grew it is, like I said, we didn't shove the conservation side down your throat, but now that we're getting bigger, we're trying to make sure that people know that's our mission. It's cool. We got some cool logos. We got a cool following, but it's like, hey, let's not get away from the task at hand here. Let's protect these fish. Let's make sure that we're gonna have big trout in the future. Because how many people have you heard say, man, it's way better than it was 30 years ago? Nobody.
Nope.
Nobody's going to say that.
It's not happening.
And then people need to realize that it's not getting any better. I mean, it's a problem.
So many more people fishing these days. I mean, you have to adapt
Technology,
to the times. That's
everything,
right.
man.
Fish don't have a chance these days with side scan and all the crazy stuff that you can do. So you have a guide business, correct?
I do. Just started last year. It's Coastal Waters Outfitters.
That's out of
Biloxi, Mississippi.
Yep. Good spot.
I got a slip right behind the Gold Nugget, right behind a casino. It's kind of cool, man. Every time I'm going to quote unquote work now, it's like I'm driving in and there's palm beaches and it's a big casino sign, and then I walk to my boat. I got my chest out, I'm like I'm in a really cool spot, But cool. It's cool, man. I love it.
You ever just come in and like take your tip from the day and like go put it on black?
Well, I did start going in there. It's funny you say that because I get done with some trips, man, and I'm trying to build my. Have you all ever been to Mississippi, the coast, and the casinos and everything?
Spent too much time there.
The more you spend in the casino, the more they give you, So I'm trying to build up my comps to get like some rooms at the Golden Nugget.
That sounds like a dirty,
or
a tricky line there.
Yeah. So if I get a string of trips, and maybe the kids are somewhere or whatever, I can just stay at the Nugget, and just walk downstairs and go to work.
That's nice too.
I can tell you right now, I spent a lot of money in there, and I ain't seen no free rooms yet. So, Golden Nugget, you need to step up here.
That's right.
Help brother out.
Might be cheaper just to rent the room and not doing any gambling.
At this point, I think you're correct. I probably should check that math.
Well, here on this show, we focus mostly on the Alabama coastline, and it's not. Tell me the differences in.
We have a lot of Mississippi listeners, though.
I think so,
Yeah, we definitely
but tell me the differences. Have you fished Mobile Bay and the Mobile Bay system much?
I have a little bit. We have a little cottage right off of Canal Street. And so I spend quite a bit of time over here. I started talking to Chris in Sam's Tackle Shop a lot, and I love Chris. Is it Vexke?
Veche. He'll be here tomorrow, actually. We're recording something with him tomorrow, yeah.
Awesome. Great guy. I love him, man.
Super knowledgeable, man.
Dude, he's so smart.
You're going to hear somebody nerd out on stuff.
Yeah. So I started going in there and talking to him and got a couple tips and, started bringing a little boat down there and fishing down there. So I fished in the Back Bay a little bit. I fished Mobile Bay for triple tail.
Any. They're all gone, man. I hate that for you.
Yeah.
That's Joe's.
Probably
that's
just stay
that's
over
Joe's
there
thing.
in Mississippi with that, I would think.
Yeah.
No,
you're right.
I tell you what, I'm gonna come to Mississippi and start fishing for triple tail.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because he's coming to Mobile fishing.
I don't have to come here. I do just fine in Mississippi.
I'll be there.
I literally saw
a
line of people waiting at a buoy, and I said, we don't have this in Mississippi.
Right.
Word's getting out on that for sure.
But no, it's cool. It's definitely different. It's two totally different fisheries, I think. A little bit. Dolphin Island kind of seems a lot like our islands, except our island's a little further away. It's about anywhere from 10 to 15 miles.
Talk about Ship Island,
Horn Island, Cat Island. Yeah.
You make it out to Petty Boy at all?
I do a little bit. It's a pretty
good haul from Biloxi.
It's a pretty good haul, yeah.
We used to go there a lot from Dolphin Island, so
beautiful, man. We've had some good times there.
Yeah.
Y'all do a lot of wade fishing on those islands as well, or?
Yep. Okay. So if I'm there fishing, for myself, I call it fun fishing now, but if I'm doing that, I'm wading, man. That's my thing. I like to be in the water, and I like to be one with nature, I guess you would say. But I'm wading, grass beds, gullies, things like that. I've been fishing those islands for a long time. My dad showed me a lot. A lot of my friends now, good friends, showed me a lot. And I kind of have my little routines, man. Do the same thing over and over, because it works.
Right.
So
you're talking about the mission, really wanting to get back to the conservation aspect of this. Like, where do you see let's use Mississippi as an example. How do you feel like the trout fishery is doing there?
It's doing better than it was. I can say that. And there's data to back it up. So a couple years ago, we went from 13 inches to 15 inches, and it's 15 inches minimum and 15 per person per day. A lot of big, controversy over that. People got mad, all this stuff. And here's what I saw. So I grew up fishing, it's called the Biloxi Back Bay, but it stretches all the way into Gulfport. And I grew up in Gulfport. I had a little skiff. I fished back there. I fished the Biloxi Back Bay a lot too. And I just used to catch tons and tons of 11 and 12-inch trout, right? Well, now you catch tons of 13 and 14-inch trout. So the program's working. The 13 and 14 inch trout, those trout are alive for another year or two and spawning for more. So the numbers are coming up. We needed our SPR rates to go up, and it is working. And I do feel like it's getting better. I personally, I go to all the CMR meetings. I'm the president of the Ship Island chapter there. I'm very involved with all of that. And I wanted to see a slot limit. I'm a big fan of slot limits. But unfortunately, on the scientific side, for whatever reason, they don't show a lot of proof that slot limits do what they're intended to do. And that was the big struggle during the CMR meetings when they were changing the regulations, is they said, well, there's not enough data to back up to say that if we put a slot limit in, that it's going to get our SPR rate where we want it.
Talk to me about SPR rate.
Spawn ratio. It's just how many trout that are out that are spawning. They're spawning age. Once they get of age to spawn.
Okay. And what is that? What is that age?
I want to say, well, it's the size. I want to say they start spawning at it's either 11 or 12 inches. I don't know. I don't remember exactly. Kind of hit me on the spot here.
Gotcha.
I've heard anywhere from like that 11 to 13 inch range.
Yeah, it's somewhere around in there.
I'll bail you out there, Kyle.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Ultimately, the more mature fish, and whether mature is 11 inches, 13 inches, 15 inches, more mature fish you have alive through a given year,
certainly,
the higher your spawning rate's going to be. Now, do you know much about when it comes to, say, a big trout? Like what over here, what we call an overslot, now that we have a slot, is that big trout, say a 26-inch trout, let's just use that one example. Does that trout spawn 10 times as many eggs as a 13-inch trout, or is it more like 2 times as many eggs?
It is a lot more. So I used to know these numbers exactly. I'll be honest, it's kind of it's one of those things that just slipped my mind. Your 22 to 24-inch trout, those are the ones that breed the most. Now, this is coming from the Gulf Coast Research Lab, who I do a lot of work with. Those are your real bread and butter.
That's the prime.
And it's unfortunate that I feel like in Mississippi, like they'll keep a whole limit of those.
Those are the ones that everybody
keeps. 3 to 4
keeps.
pounders.
Yeah.
And
everybody wants a whole cooler full of 22 inches.
I don't get it, man. A 17, 18-inch trout, that's a big fillet. 17, 18-inch trout, that's enough for me right there. One trout for me. In Louisiana, you got a 12-inch limit. You got to catch at least 2. At least 2 for a meal for me.
A little fried fish sandwich.
Yeah. I don't really get that part anymore. I hate that we've gone to that mindset that anybody who gets into trout fishing, their first goal is to get a limit. And we're trying to change that. And I know it's not just us, not just Speckled Truth. It's a lot of trout purists. It's a lot of people in the trout world that would love to see that mindset change. But gosh, man, it's taken over.
Well, I'll give the other side of that. I'm definitely back in the day was of the mindset of I'm going to get my limit.
Exactly.
That was
we
what
all
I was,
were there.
That's what
Every
I
one of
was
this
shooting
table was
for.
there.
At that point, we know what we're doing now.
Yes.
I feel like the research is there, the data is there. We know what we're doing to the population now.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you something.
Didn't know
why
10
was
years
that?
There was no discussion.
We didn't know that.
Why was that your mission? Why was that your mission to get a limit? Do you know?
My thinking on it is this. I think that the human psyche wants to stockpile as much as they can in the event that they may not have that opportunity again in the future. So the idea is just like putting up preserves. People can vegetables and, they got their summer crop and they can it for the winter. So it's kind of like preparing for lean times. I think psychologically we're just naturally predisposed to, man, we better get them now while it's getting good. Because this may not happen again.
And you can.
I agree with that.
It's legal,
Yeah, and the other thing
that's a big problem of it too.
You feel like you're not doing anything wrong because it's legal.
That's right.
It is. Yeah. But the other thing I think is that I think every fisherman and I think every angler and every hunter, and I do a lot on the hunting side too. I think we all there's a natural progression, and I don't think you can skip that progression. I really don't. And I use my wife as the example on the hunting side. She did not hunt when we met. And when she first got into it, I had already progressed into that quality deer management mindset. But I got to that quality deer management mindset by killing some shit.
But see, why can't
some super nice spikes?
Why can't we try and skip those steps though? That's what we're kind of questioning. Why can't we change the mindset that that's not your goal at first? That's kind of what we're after.
I think you can.
That's what we were taught.
Yeah,
though.
you can definitely.
Exactly.
That was the progression that we were taught. You got to instill it at an early age.
Yeah, Cooper,
it's the
my
kids.
son,
That's
is 7, and when we go fishing, he never even questions whether or not we're keeping them.
He probably wants to tag
you're raising them.
He
right.
just catch the fish, take the picture, throw it back, and then but if he knows we're in a tournament, he wants to know if we're keeping them alive or And I mean, I've instilled it in them at a young age, and
that's what I was getting at with my question to you, and it was the same with me and the same with everybody else I know. Is it starts with how you were raised?
Yeah.
You were raised to let's get them all in the boat.
Well, and I was raised on a charter boat, so I mean.
You're getting everything
we used
in the
to put
boat.
extra that's right, and you had to
if
compete.
Outdoorsmen would just take a minute and sit back and think about this, when you take your kid for the first time and him not kill it for the my son, his first couple fish, he ain't taking them. He already knows that. When I come home, my son will ask me, "Daddy, how many fish did you catch? Did you tag them?" Like he knows about tagging. He's 4 years old, man. So, I mean, that's where it's going to change. Educating people and getting them on that mindset, and then that's the only way it's really going to change, is the kids being raised to think that, this is the way it should be, not meat hauls. But I'm not saying, to each their own, man. Guys that want a meat haul, I don't have anything against them. I was there, just like you said. It's part of the evolution of it. But, man, if we could only get the mindset to be, hey, let's meat haul once a year.
And the other thing is,
it's good enough just for what you need. If you're having a fish fry, catch a few fish.
Yeah.
And you can if the fishery is in great health, then you will get them again. And there has to be that realization that, we don't need to feel pressured to put some fish in the freezer necessarily, because they're going to be there the next time we go, and we're going to have fun that time. The other thing I think I see too, though, is that there's not enough emphasis put on the secondary aspects of going fishing. And it's the same on the hunting side. We spend all our time working towards the kill. And it's like, bam, we make the kill, and then it's like, all right, haul it to the processor, turn it into snack sticks.
Right.
Nothing against that, but
let's take the back straps and whatever else for the rest.
Yeah, I mean, why not actually take the time to break that fish down or that deer down and learn how to cook some of the quote unquote undesirable parts. Take some enjoyment in the other aspects. Patrick and I had this conversation the other day off the air, talking about, I used to really enjoy getting to the dock the night before and getting all my gear together, getting the boat ready, getting everything in place so that we had a good day on the water the next day. And I took enjoyment in those hours in that process, and then also take enjoyment in the process after the fact. And I don't think we put enough emphasis on that. That was what got my wife into hunting, was that she saw how much enjoyment we had after the hunt, between cooking it, eating it, and all the different things we were doing with it. And it made her want to go get the protein so we could have that enjoyment after the fact. So I think it's a confluence of factors, but you're right. It needs to start it's got to start at a younger age. And then we also have to have the realization that when we were born, the population of the United States was about 100 million less people than it is right now.
And there's a lot less people fishing.
And there's a lot more people fishing right now.
And it may be, and it may even be that there's, and I don't know these numbers, but it may even be that there's less of a percentage
of people
fishing now, but
Possibly.
The total number of people is absolutely more than it was.
No doubt.
And when our parents were born, the population of the United States was half of what it is now. Same amount of coastline, same amount of speckled trout. I mean,
same amount of water.
The water and the coastline can only support so many fish and so much wildlife, and we're losing. We lose habitat for different reasons on both sides of the coin.
Oh yeah.
So I think we can start to work on that, but we also got to not throw the baby out with the bathwater and not make guys that go out and catch a limit. I'm not saying you do, but I think it's very unfair when you've had, how many limits of speckled trout have you caught in your lifetime?
More than I'd care to admit.
Okay, and then so then you see the guy, the guy that might be taking his 5th ever dock shot with a limit of trout, and you're like,
Why'd you kill all those trout?
Why'd you do that?
Yeah.
You know, that's not fair.
No, it's not.
No.
It's not fair. And you're not going to convert him into being a conservationist by,
exactly. That's
by
why
coming at it
you
from
don't
that
Probably
angle.
going to push him the other way.
Exactly. That was going to be my next subject, man. Is me and Chris, we've had so many talks about conservation and how we were going to approach this, and that was one of the things, man, is you do more harm than good when you do that. So anybody here listening that's an extreme conservationist, please listen up. Doing that and commenting on those pictures on social media.
Don't be a keyboard warrior.
And shunning those people, you are doing the exact opposite of what you're trying to do. It's a fact. Somebody watching that post just became a meat hauler because of your comment.
Because of you.
I'll show this guy.
Yeah. Oh, this dude? Okay. Yep. I'm going to go meat haul and I'm going to tag him. You know, and the people do it. But
you think that's some fish. Yeah.
But yeah, man, I nothing wrong with keeping them, but I'd like to. It'd be so awesome if we can figure out a way to just kind of change that mindset a little bit, because there's so much more to fishing, and this isn't just trout fishing. There's so much more to fishing than just
every
the meat.
fish that you catch.
And that's what needs to be taught first is that, like everything you just talked about hunting, the preparation, everything. I mean, you know, the first trout that I caught, I seriously remember it vividly. I didn't start at a super young age. I started at an age I was going to remember it, and I caught it on a mirror lure 7M. You know, and I was working it over at Oyster Flat in fall. Used to have this little hot water discharge coming out in the back bay, and my dad made me practice over and over and over with that 7M. And when I figured out how to work it, it felt like I had caught like croakers and things like that before. It felt like a fish was on the line when I was working it right. You know what I mean? Like when you twitched it just right, it kind of had that little vibration. And when I got out there and I caught that first trout, like I'll never forget that feeling ever. You know, and that's what it was about for me, not about filling up a box, you know, and it was like I was so proud, you know, it was pretty awesome.
So tell me a little bit about the Dirty 30 Club, Speckled Truth.
So the Dirty 30 program was an idea, it was Chris's idea, and we got it going. We were talking about data, and we were talking about programs that have been done, and we called a couple places, and we were seeing what we could do, and we wanted to collect data specifically on big trout. So there's been some studies on big trout by the Hart Institute in Texas, and what they did was they put the acoustic beacons in big trout with Captain Mike McBride and Captain Tricia and a couple of other guides down there, but nobody was really collecting or is collecting data on big trout specifically. So when we say a 30-inch trout, if you're a trout fisherman, you know that's a fish of a lifetime.
That's right.
So we were like, how can we get this data? And we thought about it and we brainstormed. And what we did is we called a bunch of the companies that we like and that we work with. And we told them about the program. And we put together a box full of lures. And, you know, these aren't just everyday lures. These are the lures that people use to catch big trout. You know, down south lures, mirror lure.
Very specialized.
Everything. Yes, very good lures. And so we got with them and we told them the idea, and they loved it. You know, they were like, absolutely, we'd love to be a part of it. So they sent us a bunch of baits. They asked us, you know, well, how many we thought were going to get entered. And we were like, we have no idea. We're just going to try it, you know. And that all depends on our reach, too. That doesn't mean every 30-inch trout got turned in. It's just whoever knew about it.
Right.
So we got this box together, and, dude, I think when the first year it was like, you know, $80 to $100 worth of lures in a box. And what we didn't think about was how we were going to ship all this stuff. So we came out of pocket, you know, me, Chris, and Ed, and we came out of pocket for that. And basically, if you catch a 30-inch trout and you submit, you know, some proof, you got to show the trout and you got to show it on a ruler or something, some sort of proof. And you tell us when and where and what on if you want, and we send you a box full of stuff for free. You don't have to pay anything.
So anyone in any state can be a part of this program, correct?
Yes. So
That's
the
really
first
cool.
year, we were like, okay,
Cool.
you know, we were like, we know we're going to get a lot of Texas, you know,
Right.
and we did. Texas dominated it. What surprised us, first of all, was the first year, just with our reach then, it was 60-something trout the first year.
Over 30 inches?
60.
I never would
Wow.
have thought that 20 trout over 30 inches got caught a year, let alone, you got to think, that's just the people we reached.
Right. And
There's no telling how many more that have no idea who we are caught 30-inch trout. So that kind of made us feel a little better.
I mean,
We were
I
like,
think I ate like 4 of them.
Yeah, sure.
I will walk away right now.
I caught a limit of 30-inch trout. I mean,
Yeah, everybody has.
But it was cool, and collecting the data, and, you know, it was cool to see that our reach is all the way up to Virginia. So we're from Texas all the way up to Virginia. we thought that was awesome. That blew us away, and we're collecting this data. And the more popular we get, the more people know about this program, the more data we collect, the more we can start putting this piece of the puzzle together. So
learn more about those big fish.
I'm glad you brought up the first trout you ever caught. I know I remember mine. Do you remember yours, Patrick?
I don't.
I don't know that I do.
No.
I remember the first, decent sized trout I ever caught. It was on your dad's Dorado in Little Dolphin Island Bay.
Oh, really?
I think it's like 6.8 pounds.
The first trout I ever caught was in Foul River.
I remember how long he was.
On a Boston whaler, 13-foot Boston whaler. I don't even know how, 2, 3. I barely remember. I just remember I gilled it.
You were 2 or 3 years old?
Nice.
In the box. Killed him. Sorry, Kyle.
I do remember.
I didn't sign up for this.
Murderers.
Chris Bush, you owe me one.
I do remember one that I caught. It was probably one of the better ones, the first time I caught one that was pushing into the 20-inch range right outside the mouth of Dog River on a grub. So
last week?
Yep.
Last week?
Yep. First time I broke 18 inches.
I'll tell you what. I want to ask both Patrick and Kyle, why is it so much different? Because it is. Why is it so much different to catch a trout in the water, like when wading? Why is it so much different to be in the water when you catch those fish?
I've been talking too much, Patrick. Go ahead.
I'm not as in love with the wading as some people are, because I'm actually more of like my creature comforts of the boat and everything. And if
Patrick doesn't like to get his feet wet.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'll do it. But I have
not done
like
much wade
some
fishing.
of y'all. Some of y'all are like super, just like, God dang, I can't wait till the water gets right so I can be in the water.
You know how some guys say, like, I'd rather catch one fish on a top water as I would 10 fish on popping cork.
I can agree with that.
I'm that way with wade fishing. I'd rather catch one fish wading than 5 fish any other way.
See, it doesn't blow my skirt up like that. I mean, I'm just like, if that's the situation, like if that's what I need to do to catch fish,
right?
I'm doing what it takes to catch fish. But if I can stay in a boat, I spent a lot of money on that fiberglass.
That's right. That's right.
I'll touch on that. I'm a little bit of the opposite. There's a lot of places that even as I've evolved as a trout angler and I got a boat and I got access to everything, there's still places I wade right off the beach and things like that.
I feel like it's so quiet.
I learned a lot more about trout when I started wading. So, and it's wintertime, it's summertime, everything. You walk, you feel the terrain, and you really, like when I'm fishing for trout, some people do this, some people don't. I picture everything in my head. I picture how that lure's working in the water. I picture where that fish is coming from, why it's coming from there. I picture the texture of the ground. I picture everything. And when I walk over stuff, it's like I scan it in my memory. I'm like, okay, I know there's a little oyster bed over here. I know, and you can do that with a jig head. You can, when you get good enough, you can roll over a shell bed and be like, this is shells. And you can roll over an oyster bed and be like, this is oysters. This is sand, this is mud. But I like being there and feeling it in those subtle changes, because I'm just very, very technical when it comes to trout fishing, and that just floats my boat.
Yeah. Well, tell us about your guide business a little bit, and I want to ask both of you guys. So we get a lot of questions on guys that are talking about, they want to get into the guide business. So how'd you get into it?
I spent 11 years in Army aviation. I was an aircraft electronics mechanic. And
thanks for your service.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. And I did that, and all throughout that, I was fishing, and I was getting in the fishing industry and working with companies and things like that, and writing articles for magazines and being in magazines and all that jazz. And I kept getting a lot of inquiries about people wanting to go fishing. And it never really appealed to me, just because in Mississippi, and it might be in Alabama too, I kind of felt like, okay, if I wanted to be a guide, I had to be a trout guide, and I had to get limits every day. And I felt like I was very capable of doing that, but I did not want to do that. That's not how I wanted to make a living, was
not
off
how
of
you wanted
limits
to compete.
of trout. Exactly.
Yeah.
I did not want my living to depend on killing limits of trout every day, because I was already to that mindset, and so of conservation. So I kind of pushed away from it for a while, and then Honestly, man, I mean, I love the Army and I love all my brothers in arms, but I got burnt out on it. You know, I got a family now. I don't really want to be away from them. I don't want something to happen to me, you know, and things like that. And so I really started thinking about it. And last year, while I still had, you know, a year left on my contract, and talked with the wife about it. And I said, I'm gonna try it for a year, you know, and be like, if this is what I want to do, then I'm going to get out and I'm going to pursue it. And Jesus, man, you wouldn't believe the slack I've caught for this, because I got 11 years in. I needed 9 more, you know, and all that.
For the full haul.
Yeah. And so everybody at work, you know, every day, dude, you're an idiot. You know, you're leaving a guaranteed paycheck and you don't know what's going to happen and this and that. And just kind of proves my passion for it, dude. And I this past summer, it was just amazing. I did not do any trout trips. It was all just, you know, people that wanted to catch fish and have a good time.
Catch whatever's biting.
That was the audience I appealed to. You go to my website, you go to my Facebook page, you will not see one dead fish. They are all live fish. I take pictures of them right after they catch them, and I make them hold them up, and just real quick, man, just let me get a picture. And luckily I got into photography, so I'm good at that. And they get to come home with those awesome pictures. You know, it's like they could put their picture of their fish next to their wedding picture. It's the same quality.
That's a mount right there.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, what kind of boat do you run, Kyle?
I got a Sea Hunt Triton, but I'm about to get a Blue Wave Machaira 2800.
Yeah, Patrick likes his Blue Wave as well.
Yeah.
I like that new one. It's fine.
It's nice, man. I can't wait.
You do a little near-shore stuff, too, in addition to inshore?
Mm-hmm. So, and that's another reason I'm upgrading to that Blue Wave is go a little further out. You know, like I was talking with you earlier, I got some offshore experience as well. I like red snapper, cobia, triple tail, all of that. I love chasing all of those, and I want to put people on those as well. And it's tricky over there in Mississippi. You know, the past 3-4 years, it's been the windiest out of probably the entire time I've been alive fishing. I mean, it's been very, very windy, and I love my Sea Hunt. It's a big boat, but I want something a little bigger. I want to be a little more comfortable. So,
well, you should be more than comfortable in that 28-footer.
Yeah, one ride in it, and I was like, "Yep, this is what I want."
Sign me up.
Well, what about you, Patrick? Why'd you get into this game?
Oh,
Patrick, that was rude.
That was aggressive, maybe a little derogatory. I'm not sure why.
You got soft skin over here.
All righty, Captain Patrick Garmerson, tell us about your guide business.
Yeah, so
that's better.
Anyway, always absolutely loved fishing since I was a child, fishing all the time. I really kind of followed a similar path as Kyle as far as, you know, the speckled trout progression of learning how to catch fish, then catching limits, and then all of a sudden, like, you know what, there is more to this. I find that we actually have large speckled trout in Mobile, and I learn how to catch them, and then instantly I'm like, you know what, I want to start targeting more of those, but putting a lot more back and really keeping less and all that stuff. And so, and really, I've always really enjoyed fishing as much as catching. And then I got into the ACFA and really got into really getting into more tournaments and just fishing more and being more just being involved. Anyway, I was at that time I was working at a golf course and I got fired. Not at this time the golf course job felt like a career job, and it was pretty devastating. You know, it was a big blow. Been there for 12 years and lost a job I thought I was in a career for, and
right.
It's like, man, I'm going to go grab my captain license. Not sure what I'm going to do with it. Got that, and that was the same year as the oil spill, so it's kind of bad timing for trying to become a fishing guide.
Yeah.
So
you got more balls than me, man.
Yeah.
So anyway,
that was a rough year for everyone.
The oil spill happened after I went through sea school.
Gotcha.
And so anyway, was able to work BP and all that stuff, and able to provide for myself, and got through that. And anyway, I started working for a landscape company, and I was chartering on the side, you know, maybe 8, 10, 12, 15 trips per year. I mean, it wasn't a lot. And one of these, at one point, I'd built these clients up where I had a couple of guys that were coming back, you know, for a week at this time or 3 days at this time. And man, the enjoyment I got out of spending 3 days with this group of guys and just the enjoyment, the respect, just everything about it, from me wait from all the gear prepping to take care of these guys, to taking them fishing and putting them on fish, and the respect that they give me for me and the fishery and everything. Like, man, there is not a whole lot more rewarding than that I could ever be involved in. And man, I just kind of had this epiphany moment that I had reached a point in my career with the landscape company, which was really developed a lot of skills that I didn't have, from sales and marketing and just customer relationships and all these things that I really didn't even have going into the landscaping business. And I came out and I got to the point where I was like, man, if I'm going to jump, it's time to jump. I'm at an age, I'm in my 30s.
Same
if
for
I'm
me,
going to
man.
do it,
that's why I did it.
If I'm going to do it, now is the time where I could go and do it. And if I fail, I got time to recover.
Yep.
I've always been the type person where if I was involved in something, it was 100%. Like deer hunting, I used to do a lot of deer hunting, and then I got to where I kind of lost a little bit of interest in spending the effort into putting into scouting and stuff like that. And when I lost the interest in scouting and was putting that into fishing, my interest in hunting just fell apart. So anyway, that's just kind of the way I am. The way once I get focused on it, I want to be in it 100%.
All in.
And then once I got into just like saying, all right, I'm going to be a guide. I'm going to be a guide, and this is how I'm going to do it. I want to be involved in all aspects of the fishing, from teaching our fishing community how to fish better.
How to get more limits.
Thankful for y'all to be able to allow me to be on the podcast to share that and my knowledge, and then, and really also on the conservation side of things and protecting what we have. I mean, as soon as I started making my living at it, I gained even more respect for the environment and making sure
just opened up all those doors.
It did. I mean, and it was like, people will come in to our community, enjoy the resources that we have, and leave and go back to their own communities. And we have to be the stewards of it.
Spread the word. Yeah.
And taking care of it, but also spreading the word of what we do have and making sure people want to come down and enjoy it.
So Kyle, y'all both are in this, and conservation's a big important driver for both of you guys. For the Speckled Truth and for you, what's your ideal situation? So do you want to see regulations change? Do you want to see a mindset change in anglers where regulations don't need to change? People just self-regulate? What's your ideal?
So the more I've gotten into it, I've really gotten thrown into the political side of fishing, and it's not fun at all. It's really not. I spend more time on the phone than people would ever believe talking about fishing, talking to senators, representatives, councilmen. There's a big political side of fishing that people just don't even know about. And going to all the CMR meetings and the DMR events and all this stuff and trying to decide, what's best. And man, honestly, the more I look at it and the more I get involved, you want to handle things at the lowest level. You want to handle it at, less regulations, the better. I'm just going to be honest.
I think it's going to start with the anglers.
It is, man. Yeah. But it's also, you got to think, there's more guys out there that are going to try and get away. There's always going to be people that try to get away with whatever. Of course. And it's a weird balance. I would love to see just the mindset change because, when I first started last year and I was running trips and there was a lot of talks, a guide in Mississippi was trying to push for a no captain and crew limit on any fish. Right now in Mississippi, it's no captain and crew limit on trout, okay? And so in my mind, like I said, I'm very conservation-minded. I don't want to do meat hauls. Well, in Mississippi, it's 3 redfish per person, right? So I had 2 guys on my boat, and they were down doing something. It was supposed to be 5 guys, but the other guys got too hungover for whatever reason. But they wanted to go out and fishing, and then they wanted to have a fish fry. So I was like, okay, I'll put them on some white trout, whatever, just some meat for a fish fry. No problem. Don't feel bad about that. Well, we go out. And dude, just the only thing biting was slot reds, and it was an on fire bite. So I made the decision, as a captain, I said it's 9 fish total. I'm keeping my captain's limit so I can, do for these guys. It's 9 fish, 9. Like, that's not going to do anything.
Right.
So when you think about the regulation side of things, it's not always the best, and now that I look at it, when I first heard about the captain and crew limit, I was kind of for it just because of the conservation mindset. You're kind of like, the more rules, the better. But then when you really start looking at the bigger picture, maybe that's not always the best. And if we can handle it at the lowest level, I feel like that's the best solution. But that's going to be the hardest. Let's make no mistake. That's definitely the hardest.
Well, and you got to remember, not everybody is in the same scenario. Where they get to fish every weekend, or they get to fish every day. Some people come down and they get to fish once a year,
right?
Yeah,
twice a year. And who are you to say, that they can't have a big fish fry if that's what they want? And if they do kill those 9 redfish, they still killed a lot less redfish than the guy who lives down here.
Yeah.
And so you do have to look at it from all angles. And I think ultimately, like you said, it's just changing the mindset that we got to go kill them.
Right.
We got to get out there, and we're not going to be happy with today, because that's the worst. As a former charter guy, that's the worst person to come walking down the dock, is the guy who's just not going to be happy unless we smash him.
So I've already started to learn some tricks. I kind of have somewhat of a mentor in the charter industry. I don't know if he would let me say that, but Eric Newman down in Venice with Journey South Outfitters, Eric and Mo. Y'all familiar with them?
I've definitely heard the name.
Okay, so they work with Yeti, CV. I mean, they're top of their game, man. They're awesome people. And I was getting ready to do my website and everything, and I was looking at all like what I considered, the top tier charter captains, and I was like, I want to see how they have their stuff set up. And I looked at theirs, and he had this little spot on there, and it said stewardship. He has self-imposed limits on his boat because he wants to protect Louisiana's fishery. And I was like, man, that's genius. And I started talking to him because of conservation, and we talk all the time. And man, he shares so much information with me, and I'm so grateful because he's been in the game for a while. And like I said, he's at the top of the game. And we've talked a lot, and dude, it's just kind of like I have self-imposed limits on my boat, I mean, like I said, maybe one day I'll keep a captain limit to satisfy my customers. It's only 9 fish, but I'm not going to keep 50, 100 trout. It ain't happening. You can go somewhere else. I mean, I'll tell the client that, but that mindset, man, it's going to be the hardest thing to change. And if nobody's called me yet and talked about a limit. Not one client has asked about a limit, and that's kind of what I'm going for. And I've learned little tricks. Even just last year, my first year getting started, we were on a good trout bite, and I had three clients on the boat. We were on a good trout bite, and we had 10 trout in the box. 10 nice trout. I mean, 15 to 20 inch trout. And I told them, I said, look, guys, we can sit here and catch these trout till the bite shuts off. I said, but right now you have an entire gallon bag full of meat.
Right.
I said, I want you to think about that. You have an entire gallon bag full. Do you really need any more than that? And they were only in town for a couple of days, know? Yeah. And they were like, that's plenty. Like, do we have to stop? I said, no, just throw them back after this.
Right.
I was, oh, sure, no problem.
That's awesome.
Now, if I never would have said that, they just would have expected every fish to go into that box. Leader. And then when we got back to the dock, I would have cleaned them, and they would have been like, what am I going to do with all these fish?
The first time I killed we were on a sick trout bite, and I was just throwing them on ice, get back to the dock, fillet them all up, got 3 gallon bags of fish, and they're like, what do you think we're going to do with all these fish? And I'm like.
They didn't even want them.
Yeah.
They
were just doing what you did.
Yeah, they did what I did, but I didn't do my job in quantifying what was going to be a successful, amount of harvest for them. And it's so many times where the question, especially people that are from out of town that come in here, most of the time the answer is they just want enough for a meal and just want to have a good time on the water. And when that happens, then you can do all kind of things. Then you can say, well, let's go catch a few trout, throw a few trout on the ice. Well, the sheephead might still be biting. Let's go catch a couple sheephead. And then you got somebody who came down from Arkansas and they get to sample maybe 4 or 5 different fish.
Right.
And
about right there.
And you're not diving off into one species and ripping it apart.
Smashing
you know.
them. Yeah.
But let's be honest, it's not just speckled trout.
No.
You know, this is a mindset that's affected every fish that's sought after fish out there. Yellowfin tuna is the one that comes to my mind.
Me too.
Is that there's absolutely no reason the limit's 3 fish per person.
Yeah.
That's
and
ridiculous.
Crazy.
That's
it's ridiculous, and it's happening.
Going back to Eric Newman, I talk to him a lot, and he's down there in Venice. I mean, right now the lumps are on fire. People are just slaughtering big tuna. I mean,
giant ones too.
We leave out of Biloxi. A good friend of mine, John McMahon. He's got a really nice 35-foot contender. We leave out of Biloxi. It's about an 80 to 90 mile run, and we go there. And man, if we slam them, we get 2 good fish. I mean, we're done. We got a 80, 90 mile ride home. We're not going to sit there and catch fish till dark and then have to ride home in the dark that far. So most people they feel like they're going to do that ride. They want to get everything they can.
They're biting. We're going to catch them.
Yeah, they want to get everything they can, and then you come back. And you ain't freezing tuna. If you're freezing tuna, you're an idiot. Yeah.
It's just not that good frozen.
Yeah,
canned it can be canned and be good, but it's just not that good frozen unless you eat it within about a couple weeks.
But people get home and they get all this meat, and then next thing you know, you cleaned a fish to give it away.
To people who don't even care.
That was one of the turning points for me with speckled trout fishing. As I got to that point to where I was going out, and I, as much as I hate admitting this, I was going out and I would get my limit. I'd get home, I'd clean it, and dude, fish was going bad. I couldn't even give it away because I was catching so much fish, and I started questioning what the hell am I doing?
Right.
Well, why am I doing this? Why can't I just throw them back? And that's why I kind of want to switch gears a little bit. That's kind of why I started getting into the tagging program. And I know y'all got it going here. We just got our speckled trout one going again, and with the research lab. And that helps change that mindset. Besides the important data, it gives you a reason to go fishing and not have to take a fish home to feel good about yourself.
Yep. I got a cool story about that. I had some kids that were, I had like a dad, a grandfather, and 2 kids. And the kids were a little wild. They were wanting to catch some fish. And anyway, the only way that the kids understood how to quantify the quality of the trip was how many fish that we had killed, how many fish that we had put on ice. And the dad had kind of lost control of the kids. The kids were trying to tell the dad that we needed to keep this fish that he had just caught. And he's like, no, kids, we're going to put them back. And I was like, hold up, boys. Let's go do something fun. And they're like, what's that? And I said, we're going to tag these fish. From now on, the rest of these fish, we're going to tag them. And then they were instantly they had almost quit fishing because we had made the discussion that we weren't going to keep any more fish. They grabbed their rods and started right back to fishing as soon as I told them and showed them the tagging and why we were tagging, let the fish go. And they went from wanting to kill everything we caught to all of a sudden wanting to catch as many as they could to tag as many as they could.
That's where it starts.
That was a really cool thing I got to be a part of. So I mean, I'd encourage anybody out there that's trying to get into tagging a little bit. I mean, that's a great way to start encouraging the younger guys, younger generation, or really anybody they don't know how to quantify the value of the trip.
Right.
If it doesn't end with dead fish on the dock or on the hood of the boat or the deck of the boat or whatever, they don't know how else to talk about how good of a fishing trip they had.
Right.
It does. Gives you a purpose.
Have y'all had a tagging program before this, or is this the first time pretty much ever?
I think there's been other little minute programs.
Maybe the public wasn't involved.
But this is definitely the first one that this is a angler participated tagging program.
See, y'all, and you're going to see some cool stuff. We had a speckled trout program a couple years ago, and I was a part of that one. And I'm very involved with the research lab, and I just call them and ask. All you got to do is call and ask questions. I don't know who's heading y'all's up, but people can call them and just ask questions, and they'll tell you the information. But one of the cool things we learned is that 96% of the trout tagged in the program last time only traveled an average of 5 to 6 miles. So that tells you that when they got recaptured, according to the recapture data. So like a lot of people think, these trout that are here at the islands, those are also the trout that are going to Louisiana and back, and which they might be, some of them. But the data we have says something else. The data says that they might go from island to island, but they're not necessarily traveling from Louisiana to here and vice versa.
Changing their geographic locations necessarily.
And you guys were saying that they've learned that they're actually, have they proven that there may be a subspecies or actually a subspecies of speckled trout?
Yeah, that's what I've heard, is that there's an actual subspecies of speckled trout, one of which is basically the Gulf trout, and one of them is the bay or in river trout, and I think they've identified that in Mississippi, and I don't know that they've done the DNA testing or whatever to decide whether or not we have the subspecies in Alabama, but they're pretty sure we do.
I could believe that. The fish on the Gulf look different. They look different, and they fight harder.
They fight way harder.
I supply a lot of the brute stock for the we do a lot of releases too. Like we just did a CCA one a couple months ago. We released 160,000 fingerlings, and we do 2 a year, and it has to be in the same spots. And the fish that are caught for the brute stock have to be from the same spots. And when I first got involved, I didn't ask questions. They just said, all right, here's a map. We need fish from here. Go get them. I was like, roger that, doing it. And then I started asking, man, they're not biting here. Can I bring some from Horn Island? They're there. And that's when they told me about what y'all are talking about. They said, we can't prove that these aren't two different types of trout in the genetic code. And if something were to happen and they bred, a trout from Ship Island and a trout from Biloxi Back Bay, and something catastrophic happened, like the research lab's liable,
Yeah.
So that was something that they had talked about.
Breeding mutant trout.
Yeah. So I think they've actually and I don't know. I don't know for a fact. I think they've actually proved that those might be some different trout. And like you said, I mean, I've gotten to the point to where I catch trout in a certain spot. It's like I'm like, yep, that trout, he lives here. You can tell. And in Gulfport Harbor, they're meaty, dude. They're mean. They got big shoulders. They got scars all over them. There's a bunch of structure over there. Plenty of bait, so they're nice and fat. And a lot of the ones at the islands, they're longer and they're skinnier sometimes. They're lighter color. Might not have as many dots, but the one in the harbor, man, they're just beautiful. I get a funny feeling.
That's the way we feel about the fish in Mobile Bay. The bay fish and the ones that go into Mobile River and Theodore Canal, and they all seem to be different fish than the ones that are on the beaches.
That's what I was about to say. The fish you catch on the Gulf beaches look way different than the ones you catch like up in Fowl River, in my opinion.
And I've always said the ones in Fowl River smell different. I swear they do.
They probably do.
Maybe.
Stinky dirty.
I'm excited to see what the hatchery here does. I listened to Patrick on the Speckled Truth, Chris, whenever Patrick was on there, and he was talking about all the fingerlings released over there, and there was a direct correlation. It was 3 or 4 years. You probably know better than I.
Somewhere in Texas that he was talking about where they were
pretty
just
much no
consistently putting the fingerlings out, and saw this huge spike in the trophy trout.
Be curious to see what it does here. It'd be really cool to find out.
That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing too back in Mississippi, and it's pretty cool, man. I don't know. I never really liked school, and I hated it. I hated sitting in a desk, but I always liked science, and I just kind of get I get nerded out on that stuff. But going and being involved with the research lab, and I mean,
when we did something you care about, you're not worried about calculus.
Well, yeah, when we did the boat show last year, Angelo, he was on the podcast recently as well, and he's the hatchery manager, and he's a phenomenal trout fisherman too, which is a cool part of it. But I was able to go to the research lab, and he was like, all right, pick out the trout you want. And they had this tank of 25-inch plus trout, and there was like 20 of them. And I was like, I'll never see this again in my life. I wanted to jump in there and just swim in there. Yeah, just lay arms wide open and just let them bite all over me. I don't even care. But
all right, it's getting weird now.
Yeah. Get some of that good trout juju on you.
To get rid of the weirdness here, that was a really good episode of Speckled Truth Podcast.
He's so awesome.
Did you listen to it?
Which one? I just listened to one that you did.
Oh, the one where he's talking to Angelos is really, really good. Like, I think you need to listen to it like multiple times.
Yeah, so
there's so much information in that thing.
I could just call that guy, just ask him whatever I want, and that's another cool part of being involved in these things. I have access to that. Like, I can just call Angelos and be like, hey man, tell me something cool, and he will. And he loves it, It's all.
We had
awesome.
Max Westendorf, the hatchery manager, on our show, I guess probably about a couple months ago now. We need to check back in with him. That was really cool.
Yeah, we do need to.
See how those fish are going.
And Angelos is kind of mentoring Max on the speckled trout side of things for Alabama.
See how your pets are doing in there.
Well, let's talk a little bit of just kind of some speckled trout tactics.
Sure.
But before we get there, what's your favorite way to eat speckled trout?
Pan-seared.
Pan-seared.
I like to.
Yeah, me too.
I get the pan real hot. I put a little bit of real butter. I don't know why I have to say this now, but I'll tell people butter and they use like fake butter, and I'm like, dude, it's not the same. Yeah. Put a little bit of real butter
Definitely
down.
Not the same.
I don't know if y'all have seen this or heard of it, but if you got it around here, it's called Fiesta seasoning. Have you ever seen that?
I've not.
So it's this little rinky-dink looking label. It's just some little Mexican chicken in a breast.
Yeah.
Right.
But
labeling's horrible.
They have a Uncle Chris's gourmet fish seasoning, and me and my wife's a phenomenal cook. She used to always make our seasoning, but we found this. A friend gave it to us, and we tried it, and I was like, this is literally what we make, But I put that on there, really, really hot. Put it down, face side, put it down, flip it over, turn the heat down, put the top on it, let it pretty much bake for about 4 or 5 minutes. Comes out, dude. It's flaky, but it's juicy at the same. Like when you take the top off, the humidity, all the moisture's in there, and
I'm getting hungry.
My mouth is watering just thinking about it.
I need lunch. I'm starving.
I love it.
I always crusted mine with a little almond meal.
Oh, look at this fancy.
Fancy.
I hear you. Fancy.
But the butter's the key.
Butter
Butter
is
is
the
the
key.
key.
Yes.
I agree with that.
Real butter, and then I throw Cavender's. Cavender's Greek seasoning is my season of choice.
And I'll say this:
Might have to
I
try
don't
the
want to eat a trout over 20 inches.
Yeah.
I really don't. They're the flake's too big. It gets coarse. It gets kind of chewy.
And you definitely don't want to freeze it either.
I think that 15 to 20 inch trout's the perfect eating trout anyway.
That's 17-inch trout's money.
I like to eat trout, man, but I'll admit it's not really my first choice. It's really not. I mean, it's good.
I like it. It's a good fish.
But it's
got to be fresh.
I would seriously, I would rather eat a sheephead before a trout. I
agree
swear.
with that.
I would.
Sheephead's delicious.
Dude, they are so good. It's kind of scary they're getting so popular. I don't know about over here, but they're getting popular over there.
Yeah.
And we actually just put in limits on it, and I'm glad we did because last year
we were talking about that earlier.
Was a bang-up
yesterday.
year. And if there wouldn't have been limits, there would have been a very serious problem.
Well, it happens with every fishery. It gets popular. People overdo it. It always happens. It's happened with everything. And you're seeing the same thing now, big dock shots with these sheep's head. And it's like, man, number one, oh, my God, having to clean all those sheep's heads.
Yeah, that's the first thing I think of.
But yeah, I mean, you can't. But I still don't care what any of y'all say. Triple tail's where it's at.
Triple tail's good.
Man,
Triple
you
tail's
just got mad
really
about
good.
triple tail. Then you're going to put them on blast about how good they are.
Joe is really weird with Joe is 1 minute giving like top secret blackfish trips, and then the next thing you know,
I want people to go after them. And that, go back to the conservation thing. Like that's why I just think it's real important to. And I know we hit on this earlier, but I just think it's important to be accepting of where people are in the process, because I dang sure went out and killed way too many triple tail back in the day when it wasn't popular like it is now, and it was a free for all. Nobody was out there, and I mean it was 3 fish per person. And
dude, I was slaughtering them before there was even limits.
Yeah, and that's what I mean.
And I feel like an idiot now.
Yeah, I mean, and
I wish I could take back 90% of the yellowfin
while we're
tuna
on
I
that
killed.
subject, for anybody listening, even in the Alabama area, the Gulf Coast Research Lab will send you tagging kits for blackfish or cobia. Like they will send them to you to tag in this area. So if you're interested in that, Google Gulf Coast Research Lab or something, reach out to Diane Gibson and send her an email, and they will send you a tagging kit here. I think that's pretty awesome. I've hooked up guys, they've hit me up on Instagram or something. I'll share recapture reports or things about tagging triple tail, and these guys have hit me up, and I contacted the research lab, and they're like, yeah, absolutely, we'll send them to anybody in the Gulf.
There's been a lot more triple tail tagging around here in the past couple of years, I would say.
That's
awesome.
But there,
a lot more.
That's another fishery that's going to need some self-regulation.
Oh yeah,
because
it's getting so popular.
It's getting popular, and it has a reason to be
talk
popular.
about
They're easy to catch. They fight hard. They get big. They're great to eat. But man, last year I took my wife. She caught a nice little 8-pound triple tail. We ate that thing for like 3 meals, fresh fish, one fish. I mean, you don't need a lot of them. So.
It's a really good thing that Stephanie's a good fisherman, or you would never eat fish. That's all he ever talks about, Stephanie catching fish.
That is a really deep dig right
Sick
there.
burn there.
Hate to call you out.
I've said
he's going to edit that out.
No, I've said many times she's a way better fisherman. That's 100%.
I know. I'm just busting.
She's a better shot too.
She's better looking than you too.
100%. All right, so let's get into a little trout tactics. I want to talk full moon. Okay, there's a lot of stuff out there about moons and tides. Tell me your moon strategy.
I'll let Patrick go first. You keep making me go first.
Okay.
Well,
you are our guest.
Yeah, you are more of the guest. I mean, full moon, new moon, three days leading up to each of them are typically banner times of the month.
So if you were a guy that was going to plan, say you were going to a new area and you just wanted to go trout fishing, you really wanted to focus on trout fishing, you had complete control of your schedule, that'd probably be, you'd take that
those
6 day
days.
windows around the new moon and the full moon would be when you'd go.
Yep.
What do you think about that?
Same, but also something I learned, and Chris is the one who opened my eyes to this, is if I am, again, fun fishing for speckled trout and big trout, I am fishing during a minor or a major, 100%.
You would have loved Chris's presentation at the ACFA meeting the other night. He nerded out on it hard and showed graphs of solar
activity. Yeah, so we have.
It was pretty gnarly.
Some of that data, and this is why, like what Patrick just said, is we're developing the data that backs up what he just said, and it is true. And about old school trout fishermen, they've known that for a long time, but they don't know why, and they don't know if it's a fact. They just know that's when they catch fish. Well, we are collecting the data that proves that. So, you have this solunar activity and it'll be, like 5 or 10 or whatever for the entire month. And the month that the solunar activity was high, we had tons of
like 30-inch
trout turned in.
Yeah.
And so, but when it comes to the minors and majors, the moon's either directly below you, rising or falling, or directly above you. And so that's your minor is 1 hour and your major's 2 hours. And your tides also coincide with that. So you have the tides that factor into it as well when you think about, moving the bait. But it's just like hunting. I know a lot of hunters follow the solunars because it's just a natural instinct that tells creatures when to eat.
Got to feed and move.
And so my theory on it, and lots of talks with Angelos and other biologists, is that the big trout, they do, I do believe they do eat like big meals, and then they kind of chill for a little while. They didn't get that big being stupid. So they realize that they're not the only ones out looking for food during those times. So they're not going to go out and risk getting ate or caught by somebody unless they know that they're going out to eat. I have seen with my own eyes multiple times very big trout at the islands just chilling. I'm talking about just chilling in the water. And you throw everything you got at them, and they see you, and they're not even really like that mad about it. They just kind of like linger off, and you're like, are you kidding me here? But those big fish, and when you start doing that, you start getting into that mindset of big trout, and you start fishing during the solunars. So you think about it, you're not just like, okay, I'm going to get up at, daylight. I'm going to be in my spot at daylight because that's my best time to catch a trout, right? It might not be. It could be, yes, that is a good time to fish, but there are plenty of times. Ed and Shane down there at the Speckled Truth booth, there's some spots I'm not going to say on this, but we will. And they're popular big trout spots, but people will hit it in the morning and in the evening. And by the time they're leaving in the evening, sometimes when the majors are in the middle of the day,
it could be 9 or 10 a.m. when it's supposed to be happening.
2, they're all leaving. They're gone. They're like, I fished in the morning. There was nothing there. We pull up and we just whack them, and big trout. And people would never believe it that we're sitting there. And sometimes it's spots that we're throwing topwater in the middle of the day. And I can't for the life of me understand why people only throw topwater during the summer and only in the morning and only in the evening. I throw topwater 24/7, 100%. It's not my go-to, but I do not only limit it to those times.
I certainly agree. And I've actually, a lot of the bigger trout, anything really anything I've ever caught 7 pounds and better, I've always gone back and looked at the feeding times, and I think almost all of them have fell in the major feeding times.
So
and not all of them have been in the time period when I told you about 3 days before full and 3 days before new, but it is. There's definitely a correlation there that, like, especially when I'm tournament fishing, we've talked about this before, I might have a plan that I'm going to go kind of through these zones where I'm going to fish and try to catch some trout, but I'm going to
be right here.
I'm going to my best possible spot
when it's game time.
And that's where I'm gonna hunker down and go for my biggest fish. And I don't care if I went through there at daylight.
Right.
I'm going back when that feeding period is right.
So I got a story about what you just said and what really made me a believer. A couple years ago, me, Chris Bush, his dad, we all three of us went down to Port Mansfield, Texas, and wade fished for big trout with Mike McBride. And it was just, I learned so much on that trip. It was unbelievable. But that's a whole nother massive story. But on the way home, Chris had flown down there, and he flew out, and me and Mr. Charlie, which if you don't know Mr. Charlie, you're missing out on life. It is the nicest man you've ever met in your life.
That's Chris's dad?
Yes, dude.
I think he tagged like 12,000 trout
top
in 4
trout
years.
tagger in Louisiana for years. Tagged.
Think about that.
Over 12,000 trout. Tagged. Right, so the guy knows a thing or two about trout. So on the way home, on the way from Port Mansfield, it's a long drive and it sucks. It was miserable, but I was stuck in the car with a trout master for that long. So I'm just picking his brain, and he didn't mind it one bit. So we start talking about it. We start talking about the moon, and we got a long drive ahead of us, and he's driving. And he's like, Kyle, I'll tell you what, I want you to do something. And I was like, what's that, Mr. Charlie? He was like, I want you to get on your Facebook and get on your pictures you have of big trout and go back and really think of what time, exact time that you caught those fish. And let's look up the Solunar tables and see.
That's cool.
And, dude, I shit you not, every single big trout was caught during a Solunar. And that blew my mind. And I'm sitting there like freaking out. And he's a little man, and he's real right up on the steering wheel. He's holding it with two hands, and he's just smiling. He's just like, I told you, Kyle. I told you. And I'm just like, Mr. Charlie, you're right. And we talked about it. And dude, I tell people that all the time, and I don't know if they don't believe me or what, but I say do it. If you've been fishing for the past couple of years and you're posting the pictures on Facebook, go back
and look.
Think about
or even
what
in your
time,
camera roll, you can see what time you took it what day.
Go online, go look at a Solunar table, Google that, and go back to that day and see when the majors and minors were. And sometimes it's not 100%. Some of those fish were like maybe 45 minutes or an hour before or after, but that's no coincidence.
Real close.
It's close enough to be like, okay, something's going on.
So
here.
when I plan my trip with Patrick, we're going to go wade fishing 3 days before a new moon on a minor or major.
I would do a major.
And we're going to throw top waters. And
I'm in.
What other variable can we throw into the mix?
Tide
and bait.
Well,
talk about tide.
Yeah, there's certainly – so shallow water fishing, I look at more of tide levels, like water levels. Like I have certain areas where when the water's really, really low, I just kind of avoid them.
Me too.
And when there's
For sure.
and when it's real high, when you're going to have a really nice big high tide like in the spring, then if you've got the height of the water is high and you've got a nice moon and feeding times all lining up, those are good times to go there.
Time to whack them.
Yep. Actually, a lot of times if you're going to a new area and you're wanting to test these theories, throw top water, because when that joker blows up,
it's going to be worth it.
Yeah.
So you said
and even if for some reason you don't connect on that big fish on top water, they just showed you that they're there, and they're ready to feed.
Well, that was one of the things I learned from Mike McBride too. Is he's another one. He's kind of Chris's mentor. He's a phenomenal writer, and he is just, you could sit there and listen to him talk for days. Like he's got that, just he's a Texas cowboy, just a really rugged dude, but he's so enthusiastic, and you could listen to him forever. But we were fishing, and he was telling me when they started kind of getting away, not really getting away from topwater, but exploring more options. And this was 20 years ago. And they said we started to realize, Kyle, that sometimes they like to eat something that's right in front of their face.
Right.
That's when they started going to, 1/8 ounce jig heads and soft baits and right in front of their face and things like that. But like he said, if there's a big one in the area, they just get so damn mad at that topwater. They at least swat at it,
Yep.
and like you just said, just having that swat, that goes into the next thing with chasing big trout is mindset is key. You have to, when I switched from looking for numbers to looking for big trout, that was something that Chris told me about, and I really took it seriously. In my mind, I was like, if I at least get a hit, or at least even if I don't land the fish, if I hook onto it and I know for a fact it was a big trout, that's my satisfaction for
awesome.
The trip.
Yeah.
And there was so many trips that didn't even happen, but I just kept sticking with it. And I knew where numbers were because I keep a log. I've been keeping it for a long time. And I knew where big numbers were, but I was like, I got to figure out this big trout game, man. And when you did get that blow up or you did get that hit, you're like, I was in the right spot at the right time. Yeah. I was like, I'm right there. I
just didn't win that time.
Yep, exactly. Yep. And that mindset will make you become a big trout angler. No doubt.
You said topwater. You'd prefer to throw topwater 24/7.
No, I just said I do. I didn't say that. I said that
he won't shy away from picking one up.
From it. Yeah, I will try
at any point in the day.
I like suspending suspending soft baits. That's my thing.
What's your favorite?
Egret baits, 5-inch wedge tail, rigged weedless with a 5/0 owner hook, swim bait hook.
I've just recently started throwing that a little bit.
Please,
it'll whack some fish now.
Call Ken, tell him to start making them again. I've been telling everybody, man. Ken Chamont, the owner of Egret Baits, man, I think it's such an underrated bait. It was big for a while in Texas, and it just kind of fell off, and there's something going on with the molds or something like that, and I really wish he'd come back with some new colors and some more. Ed Crum down there at the Speckled Truth booth, I always joked, and I told them, I said, like I said, we weighed at places and we weighed late at night. And I said, if y'all ever catch a real big trout, I said, call me and I'll come take a picture. So you have a badass picture of that fish. And so Ed calls me one night, like 10:30. I mean, my kids are asleep. He calls me, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm sitting there playing on Facebook, and I'm like, mute. Yeah. and then he calls me again. I'm like, mute. And then he texts me. He's like, dude, I just caught a massive fish, and I was like, text him back, and I was like, bullshit. And so he texts me back, and he's like, dude, I'm serious, call me. So I call him, and dude, I can hear it in his voice. He's like, I just caught a monster. He's like, come down here and take a picture. He's like, please. And I was like, all right, dude, done.
Got to now.
Jump up, man, in my jammies, I jump in, and I'll haul ass down there, and it's an 8-pounder, solid fish, dude. And I'm like, what did you catch this on? 5-inch wedge tail. Yep. He's been fishing that spot forever, throwing corkies, throwing everything. I don't know, there's so many factors to it. There's no telling if that fish was going to eat whatever he threw. But that's what he caught it on. And I've been trying to tell him it was so great. I got to rub it in his face so hard because I was smashing good trout on 5-inch wedge tails. And he was so hard-headed throwing everything else. And I get down there and I'm like, I told you. But it was awesome, man. I love that bait. It sinks. One thing I just started doing was I get the little rattle chambers, the H&H ones that you can just buy. And so I just cut a little slit. I actually use the tag and applicator, and I plug it into the bait, and it makes the perfect hole. And I put that little rattle in there. Killer, man, love it.
We didn't get to the best tide. What do you feel like it is?
Incoming? Best tide?
Yeah, incoming, outgoing.
Oh, it's totally dependent on the time of the year and where I'm fishing.
That's not helping me, Patrick. I'm trying to plan a trip here.
I mean, I like south end of the bay, spring, early summer. I like a big high tide early in the morning, to even a big high tide late morning. Even I like a bigger tide there. But
that's what she said.
Yeah, you do. I'll tell you, neat tides in certain situations. I don't know
that I would like to hear.
Yeah,
what are you doing on a neap tide? Because That's one where I'm like, I don't even want to go fishing.
Everybody's like, oh, it's neap tide. We're not.
Yeah, neap tides.
We're cutting the grass. Yeah.
There's no tell. I mean, they're going to spread out all throughout the water column. I mean, you just have to fish the whole water column and get the bait in front of their face. Usually, you're not going to. I don't think I see a lot of fish on top water in that particular time of like in a slow tide, but they could be just a foot or two below the surface to even, if you're fishing in the middle of the bay, 18 feet of water, anywhere from top to bottom. Usually more in the upper third, and I don't care how hot it is.
I will say that it's definitely a lot harder during a heat tide, but it's also another very good time to target big trout. And you wouldn't think it, but this is coming from Mike McBride, a lower Texas legend. And his theory is that during that neat tide, the big trout know that the bait's just relaxed. They're chilling. They're not getting pushed anywhere. They're not being forced to be anywhere.
And you can fish places that you can't fish on a strong tide, right?
Down there in Texas, they're feeding on big mullet. That's mainly what mullet, and they call them piggies. They're like the croakers, down there. But they're mainly feeding on big mullet. And if you've seen during a neat tide or somewhere where there's not a lot of tidal movement, you'll see the mullet, little dumb fish. They just got their head out of the water, and they're just sitting there chilling. They're just going in little circles, sitting there just hanging out, enjoying life. And then a big trout just comes up and just ends it. Yep, just ends it. So that's also something to think about, is if you got an area that has got a lot of bait, or a lot of bait's been there for days or whatever, and there wasn't a strong tide before that neat tide to flush them out or whatever.
That's a good point, too.
And you go back there, you'd be surprised, man. There might be a big girl sitting back there chilling. And those big trout are very exclusive, man. Like, a lot of the places we fish are not heavily fished places or heavily trafficked areas. It's places that, there's not a lot of movement. But there's so many different factors. Some of the places are very popular places that big trout get caught all the time,
Well, if there's one thing that's for sure, there's no exact answer to it all. There's a lot of variables in it, and that's where folks can start tuning into the Speckled Truth, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's what
absolutely.
You guys cover. You go in-depth on trout fishing, trout conservation. I'm sure a lot more. If folks want to get more information about the Speckled Truth, what you guys are doing, start following you guys, listening to the podcast, what's the best way for them to do that?
So on Facebook, The Speckled Truth, Instagram, Speckled Truth, website, The Speckled Truth. It's such a unique name. And that's something that's so awesome about it. If you Google Speckled Truth, all of our stuff comes up. It's all our stuff. But definitely the website. We got a lot of changes coming to the website. We're really excited about it. We're hoping that will be the new place that you just see everything. Right now it's Facebook, because that was the easiest platform. But it's about to be the website. Everything's going to be on the website. We're ramping up our YouTube and everything. We're going to have all the podcasts on there, all the latest blogs, and we got a lot of really excited things coming. SpeckledTruth.com.
Awesome.
It's going to be really cool, man. We're pumped about it.
Well, folks, that's going to wrap it up this week. Kyle, if folks want to get in touch with you and put together a trip, if they find themselves hungover in Biloxi or Gulfport at some point, how do they do it?
Man, my website's fishcoastalwaters.com, and I'm on Instagram, Captain Kyle Johnson. That's CAPT Kyle Johnson, and on Facebook, Kyle Johnson or Coastal Waters Outfitters.
Well, Kyle, you just stay yourself over there, catch a triple tail in Mississippi.
I'm coming over here so much now.
Don't let me see you in my waters.
I'm going to tag you and everything.
Don't come in my waters. If you stay over there, I'll stay over here. How about that?
I'll put a beacon on his boat for you.
Dropping pins after you catch it.
Every triple tail I catch in Mississippi, I'm a hashtag Mobile Bay.
Right.
hashtag Suck It Joe. And we appreciate you being on, buddy. We enjoyed it. Be a good show.
All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up. As always, please like us on Facebook, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and if you're over on iTunes, drop us a review. We want to hear your thoughts on the show. It helps the show and helps us keep bringing you guys more content like this. You guys get out there and keep whacking them.
This week's Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report has been brought to you by Geico. Call Ron Davis, Geico agent, at 251-445-0053 or visit him online at geico.com facebook.com/mobile-al. Also brought to you by
Advanced Transmission in Spanish Fort. Give the professionals a call who have been trusted on the Gulf Coast for over 25 years at 251-626-6061 or check them out online at www.advanced-transmission.com.
This week's Saltwater Fishing Report is brought to you by Angelo Depaola, the Coastal Connection with eXp Realty, your boating and beach property specialist. Check me out on Facebook at Angelo Depaola Realtor, the Coastal Connection, or call me direct at 850-287-3440.
Also brought to you by Coastal Conservation Association of Alabama. Check them out at ccaalabama.org.
And also brought to you by Daycool Heating and Air, your home performance specialist. Contact them at 251-260-3858 or check them out online at www.daycoolair.com. License number AL07028. And also brought to you by Fishbites. Check out their full line of freshwater, saltwater, tackle, and apparel at fishbites.com.